All right, we are recording for Chapter 10 of Star Trek 6 and Undiscovered Country. Um, okay, it is still possible for the issue that I have in this chapter, and I've had it before, but it's a bit more striking here. It's still possible for that to be redeemed. We have to wait and see. The issue is largely that the detective story aspect to this is very thready, where it's just saying things, and it's like, how does that make any sense? Why is that relevant? Like, why is that the conclusion you would come to? It has that doesn't make sense. It can be redeemed if we get a good explanation to the conspiracy. If we don't, I think I'll have to drop this down to a 2. I think I'd still recommend the story, but it's like that's what 2 is, where it's flavored towards failing to recommend. Where it's like, yeah, it's got problems that I can't ignore, but I still enjoy reading it because I am enjoying reading it. But and the quality. This may sound weird. The quality of the chapter is still fine. It's still very steady, like previous chapters. Maybe a little lower than some previous, but it's still, by and large, very steady. But that doesn't mean that specific aspects of the content, specific details of the content, do not have issues. I have another way to put it for a book that I read too recently to do these videos in, and I'd rather not name it. Just because I know there's some people that really like it. I do not. It has, to my mind, a tremendous amount of technical and world-building flaws in it that are not really overcomable. However, the actual writing I found very enjoyable and just would sit and just read, because it was very enjoyable to read. It's just if I stopped and thought about it, it was nonsense. So, anyway. But first highlight here. So Spock, Chekhov, Uhura, and Valeos are inside Ensign Dax's quarters. That's where they found the boot in his locker. It would have been foolhardy and illogical for the assassin to hide damning evidence against him in his own locker. This is Spock's point of view. Ensign Dax was no doubt as blameless as Jim and McCoy, yet Valeris seemed entirely unaware of the fact. Her manner when she notified Spock of the discovery had been, and still was, fairly triumphant. But it even mentions here that the moment he enters, Spock is like, yep, you didn't do it. Because he doesn't even need to look down, he knows. Yeah. So you are Technician Dax, all that, and it's like, Chekhov still gets the Russian epic of Cinderella. If the shoe fits, wear it. It doesn't describe him taking it off the wall and then dropping it in front of Dax like in the movie, which it's a good moment because it's him being so aggressive and yet not realizing that he's of a species that has wide-webbed feet that could never use such a boot. He is a Xenosian, Zeosian. I'm just trying to check if there's anything else. Yeah, it does also have... Had Spock been entirely human, he would have been very hard-pressed not to smile at that moment. Just check off making his mistake. Eventually, though, they do realize it. And Spock is basically like, yeah, you're fine. Any idea how it got in there? No? Alright. You can go back to your dues. But if you think of anything, let me know, okay? Need to know. Sure. Okay, there you go. Then he tells Valeos to continue. So I did highlight the Xenosian natives' face reflected curiosity. Did highlight that just because of the whole... I think that some people do try to relate this Dax to the Dax of Deep Space Nine. Which, it's one of those things I'm just like, yeah, you do have... the possibility that, they just changed the species, because the first Trill is seen in TNG and looks nothing like what we see in Deep Space Nine. That was a lot closer. Well, actually, no, I'm not sure. Because this was 91, 92. That we may have already gotten the Trill introduced in TNG by then. Not sure. But anyway, so it's possible they could change, but no. We have a specifically different name for the species here. So, no, there's no relation. It's just coincidence that the name Dax is used both times. And I'm sorry, it's just one of those things, because I've also seen... Crap, I cannot remember his name. Davidson? I don't remember. But there's also, like, this theory that, because there's this one... Well, there's a commonly used name. It's David or Davidson, something like that. I don't quite remember. David's, maybe. That's the name used for the Temple Cold War. I hate the concept of that. But the name of that dude in Enterprise, and it's like, oh, there's also a character with that name in First Contact, and he's also in Insurrection, I believe. I'm not sure if he continued to be in Nemesis. But he's just, like, one of the crewmen or a lower officer that's just there. And people are like, oh, it's all the same guy. And it's like, yeah, different facial face there, different actor. But it's just, no, it's all the same guy. And see all these... Shut up. It's stupid. Two people can have the same name. And it's just, that happens here too. I get the idea to want to do those theories, but it's one of those things where, and I've done this plenty of times, where I've thought through something, but I know that the underlying assumption is false. But that's fine, because I'm still thinking through. It's still a good mental exercise. But when you then put it forward that, hey, that's what's going on here, it's like, no. There are so many other better explanations, like just, they reused the name. That's probably what it is here as well. It's just... It kind of falls under the whole... And by the way, there's something more in this a little later. Which, yeah, it's also that. It's just weird that obsessive view that some have that, oh, no, it all connects together. It's all completely coherent. It's like, no, it's not. These stories are written by many different people. Not even just counting the novelizations. I mean, it's like we got Leonard Nimoy involved in the telling of this story, the writing of this story. Last one we had was Shatner. Before, I actually don't remember who had said did the stories for the trilogy, but it's still, I mean, it's like you see variation there. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I'm pretty sure Superman is an example of this in the comics, where what are the powers of Superman? Whatever the author needed at the time. I mean, it's trying to build up a coherent... Well, trying to build coherence is not always possible, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, they can be, but it doesn't have to be. In a situation like this, with Star Trek, different authors, but it's written over years, and it's like you try and tell different stories. It's like, yes, you do want a general core consistency. But there can be times that it goes off and does things incorrect. Or it does things that, yeah, it doesn't really line up with the rest. That's okay. You can still try, but it happens. So move on. And people try to force it. I'm sorry, I just feel like, why? Like the whole appearance of the Klingons and trying to come up with the explanation. It's like, they finally got a budget for the makeup. I'm sorry, it's like, that's the explanation. But what about an in-universe? There is no in-universe explanation. It isn't needed. We never needed it. Right, the whole, we don't talk about it. In that one Deep Space Nine episode, that's fine. That's plenty. We don't need more than that. Just leave it at that and move on. Like, it is as though people forget it is a television show. Granted, the original series was made as a television show. When you got to TNG, now they're trying to be Star Trek. They're trying to be Star Trek shows. They're trying to have a consistency, to have that coherence. That doesn't mean they achieved it 100%. Trills are an example of that between TNG and Deep Space Nine. I think that there might be some others between like Deep Space Nine and Voyager, but in any case, it still is that happens. Just calm down, move on, make up changes and such. It happens. Oh, there was another thing though that entered my mind. What was it? And it was when I looked down here, because everyone went, yeah, that's right, there's that point too. But I'm blanking on it now. Oh well. We got this here. So before Kirk and McCoy even get on the lift that they were told to take by Martia, the night before, Kirk's already like, I don't trust her. Which is good. In part because, well, Kirk is thinking, right? Because now he finally knows what his own situation is, I think is a way to put it. He's able to truly start processing. Like, at the trial, he couldn't. He would not be able to start processing it then. Because still so many variables going on. He has no idea what's necessarily going to happen. He was actually expecting, they're just going to execute me, so won't matter. But now it's like, okay, I have an opportunity. So do they to kill me. But I still have this opportunity. And I generally know, yes, people are out to kill me. But I'm alive. I'm here. I got the Viridian patch, which we get a little bit more of an explanation to. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it was. Anyway, it'll come up later, so I don't need to worry about forgetting about it. But we get a little bit more explanation on the Viridian patch, and that I'm happy about. So, yeah, it's like, okay, he can focus on, okay, getting things done, as opposed to being resigned to his fate. He can focus, and it's like, good. So it makes sense, his character is kicking into his normal motivations of survival. There's this, however, that does not make sense as far as motivations. Out of the corner of his eye, Jim saw the prisoner beside him slip a modest fortune in crystals, dilithium crystals, under his coat. In the next instant, a blast of light left him phaser blind. When his vision cleared, the prisoner was gone, and McCoy was standing at the staring at the empty space in mute horror. So, Ropente is a dilithium mine. They're actually, like, good quality crystals, so it's like, holy crap, there's a lot of money that I'm currently holding. Like, McCoy even makes such a comment. And, apparently, a person was like, all right, I'm going to take this. Why? This makes no sense. What value could that possibly have in the prison? It's not like, hey, I'll trade you this one. It's like, what am I going to do with this? This is only useful on a ship. Do I look like I'm on a ship? Why are you offering this to me? I mean, I can't give it to the guard or anything like that. I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to take that and be like, hey, guard, this thing that I'm supposed to be, putting on here and just letting you take away this thing? Hey, you want to buy this from me? What are you doing? What are you doing? Why would you even bother with this? Go away. Go. See, I don't see how there's any value there. I get the idea of showing that they're in danger. But this is still stupid. You could have it be something else. Like, the guy is just failing badly at whatever he's doing. Or even, you know what? Okay, this I like. This would work. If he were using the drill near support, and he accidentally cuts it somehow, and does some damage. Not enough for it to fall, but enough for it to start, like, creaking or something. And then he reacts by, like, jumping back. He's no longer doing his work. And then he gets shot because it's like, well, he's a danger. That would work. That would work. Now, true, we then don't get McCoy being like, that's what he does. The crystal he just pulled, he is very obvious in putting it down on the flatbed nearby, and it's like, I ain't taking it. I'm not taking it. I don't want it. You want it. Hey, you have it. It's yours. It's yours. Okay. So moving on. We're back to Spock, and he's thinking, and we get this line that's one of these. This is one of the lines that is the detective stuff in here, the detective story stuff doesn't make any sense. The fact that no attempt had yet been made on Azit Bur's life suggested the conspiracy extended well beyond the Klingon Empire. Huh? Where's this coming from? They didn't kill her yet. So what? What does that mean about the Klingon Empire? That just means that if the assassins are solely in the Klingon Empire, they haven't tried to kill her yet. They might be waiting for a better time. Doesn't tell you a damn thing about how large this conspiracy is. You know what does tell you about how large the conspiracy is? The fact that they had conspirators on board the Enterprise. At least two, because you had the assassins that went onto the bird of prey. And at by this point, yeah, because it was in the previous chapter that they found the blood, so you know they came back, and you found the gravity boots, which is that just not part of like standard equipment? I mean, the gravity boot situation is also kind of weird. Like, so them being on the ship is an anomaly, or is it that they had to have a extra pair they couldn't, or they if they took it out of where they normally stored, then it's like, well, we got blood on it, and we can figure out who did it. And is it stuff that you can give explanations for where the boots came from? But it does seem to be like, oh, no, there's Starfleet issue. Because it talked about Starfleet uniforms are all fireproof, so you can't just throw them into the incinerator. It's like, oh, okay, so it makes sense that they're on the ship, but it doesn't make sense that these are on the ship, so you would look for them anyways. So you know there have to be conspirators within Starfleet. At least those two, likely a third, because somebody had to modify the databanks. In fact, that's not done yet. I'll get to that later. But the databanks were modified to say they had fired twice. So that not only means you've got two people that that know how to use the gravity boots and know how to use phasers. Okay, granted, that's not necessarily many. Know how to use the transporters. Phasers, say, okay, that plenty of people. Transporters, not as many, so it's like, okay, that's fewer. But you need somebody who can modify the databanks. That is probably a semi-restricted skill. Like, there might be plenty of people that use the computer, but the ability to change it and not leave a record, that actually should be brought up. Because that should be Spock realizing, okay, whoever did that is highly skilled. And that should actually point to somebody like Valeris, who would have the skills necessary just by virtue of her role on the ship and being, this may sound weird, but being an officer. Because officers, I'm just trying to think of the best way to put this, because I was tempted to say run the ship, but that's also not entirely true. The crew operates the ship. The officers direct the crew how to do that. So they run the ship, but it's the crews that actually operate everything. But by virtue of that, she would need the ability to access and use the databanks, the computer. And also being, at the panel there, it's like her role. I could see she does have specific responsibilities there, not just training, but responsibilities. But Spock could have been initially like, well, it can't be when just not thinking of the officers and just thinking, okay, who in the crew might have this skill, or who of the crew might have the skill, but we don't know. I think he should be thinking along those lines. You could be saying that, but we're not. What the hell was this next thing? Yeah, so I don't know how her as a bird not being dead yet means it extends beyond the Klingon Empire, unless it is he's thinking their next target might not be her. They had more pieces of the puzzle, the boots, the traces of Klingon blood on the transporter pad, but not enough to exonerate the captain. Disturbing to think that some of the conspirators might still be here aboard the Enterprise. Were there those within Starfleet, indeed aboard this vessel, who remain loyal to the Klingon warrior class? What the fuck is this? Why is there anyone in Starfleet that would be loyal to the Klingon warrior class? Where is this coming from? Because, it's who remained loyal. It's not just that are loyal, but remain loyal. Like, you have people in Starfleet that were part of the Klingon warrior class. What? Why are they here then? What? Because we're not talking about a Worf situation here. Full-blooded Klingon that was rescued by humans and raised on Earth, but also raised kind of to be a Klingon. That's like, okay, he might have challenged loyalties, in which case, you don't let him in Starfleet. At the time of this story, right? Time of TNG, they're at peace, so it's not so weird. Okay, but it still is. Conflicted loyalties, you wouldn't do that. Or are they talking about double agents? Which you'd think Starfleet would be working very hard to keep out. Certainly not on board a ship like this. So, but you're just like, oh, who remain loyal. They should never have been loyal. What are you talking about? This is very thready. But this is the detective portion. Maybe when we get to the actual reveal of the conspiracy, it'll make sense. But if it's just, yep, here's a conspiracy, here's how it is, versus here's how the conspiracy started and grew. Because how did Klingons and Federation members come together to work on this conspiracy together? And why? That I need an answer to. If I don't get that, and if I get it and it's bad, it's a 2. It would have to be a 2. I don't think I'll drop this to fail to recommend. I don't believe I will do that. Maybe. It's possible. I don't think so. I don't think it will happen, but it'll be a 2. Because that's the only way you can redeem this. The only way, because then I can say concerning this shit that it's okay. This is like side story stuff that I don't like the Sulu nonsense, the Sulu Excelsior nonsense in the Search for Spock novelization. That's nonsense. I can set that aside because that's enough to the side compared to the main story. I'm fine. The conspiracy is the main story. The detective stuff is to the side. It's connected to the conspiracy, but it's to the side. But if the conspiracy ends up being crap, yeah. But if it is good, then it's like, okay, I can set that aside and it's like, just focus on this. And unfortunately, Spock and Kirk trying to figure this out, they're idiots. But yeah, mainly Spock. What the hell is this next one? Okay. So he is still reflecting on certain things. And I mainly just highlight this because I do like that this is where I always interpreted Spock, especially at the time of Undiscovered Country, as being. So it's nice to actually see it written out. And I wonder how much this is Nimoy doing it. Yeah, right, hang on. Right there. That he wanted to give Spock more balance. Valeris reminded him very much of himself, of the young Spock, despairing at the reality of her emotions, struggling to master them. Spock found himself in the opposite situation now. He no longer feared his emotions, but valued them, desired to use them in a controlled manner to enhance his life. He wished there were means more effective than words through which to communicate this insight to Valeris. He would have liked to share more of his experience with her. He regretted that he now had to leave the Enterprise while she remained. I mean, it's kind of nice. It is also it's not what a mind meld is specifically to enable you to do, but yeah. And maybe it's kind of setting up that, yeah, mind melds are not necessarily the best thing to do. You shouldn't just, I'm going to mind meld. I'm going to mind. Maybe that. I don't know. So when we get the mind meld later, it's more significant. Or it could just be it's not appropriate to do that typically. I'm just thinking. Mind melds do tend to be emergency situations. Or totally consenting where it's like within the family. But I can't really remember other... So it might just be we're not family, it's not an emergency, so I shouldn't do it. Might just be that, but it still is a means beyond words. You do have that. Alright, well, though, to be fair, it could also be she admires him enough that somebody else even, I think it was in the previous chapter, even mentioned that it seemed like she has a crush on him. That also could be a reason not to have a mind meld. Because if that were to happen, what if that emotion actually did get impressed onto him and then it ceased being unrequited, essentially. That could be dangerous. So, anyway, what's this next part? Oh, yeah, this. Which, I'm okay with this. So, he's alerted and needs to come up to the bridge because Kirk and McCoy... I'm not having a good day, am I? Kirk and McCoy are outside of the beaming shield and so are detected. So it's like, we can go. But, Sir, Uhura said suddenly. Spock turned at the point of panic in her tone. The Universal Translator. I was just programming it for Klingonese, but it's not responding. It's coming out all garbled. That's actually interesting that it says Klingonese, because that's, in The Trouble with Is it Trouble with Tribbles or Trials and Tribulations? I can never remember which one is the original series and which one is Deep Space Nine. Good episodes both. But you do get when the Klingons in the original series, when talking about how that's why everyone in the quadrant is learning Klingonese. But at other times, the language is referred to as just Klingon. Need to skip a highlight temporarily, but if, as I suspect, all our computer databanks have been stripped of all information on the Klingon language, then we will have to rely on the archive library. What is now required is a feat of linguistic legerdemain and a degree of intrepidity before the captain and Dr. McCoy freeze to death. So that's why they actually pull out the books. It's not just the universal translator can't be used because they'll recognize it. It's no, this universal translator has been sabotaged. And if we were to try to use it, it would come out obviously not correct. But we also get this comment, which at the time it's it's ambiguous, but Even if Enterprise ran cloaked into Klingon space, she still risked detection by specially equipped listening posts inside the Klingon border. And without the translator to aid them, the risk of attack escalated enormously. The conspirators were at work again. So this is just acknowledging that yes, it has been sabotaged. But even if Enterprise ran cloaked in Klingon space, she still risked detection by specially equipped listening posts inside the Klingon border. There's a couple things here. One is, okay, it's ambiguous. Maybe he's not saying that the Enterprise is has a cloaking device, but it's just even if we did have one, it didn't matter because they have the ability to detect them. Okay, problem here. The Klingons have cloaking technology and have listening posts to listen for us. Okay, you'd think the Federation would also have comparable listening technology. Might even be better because they got enemies like the Klingons and the Romulans that both have cloaking devices. And we're acknowledging that it's possible to detect. So how the hell is the bird of prey getting into Federation space? That's a problem. Because you've just defeated the bird of prey, the prototype bird of prey. I mean, maybe there is an answer. I'm not sure. Maybe it'll come up later. I'm not sure. But that's a problem. Okay? It really is. I mean, to help... It's actually kind of funny, because literally just finished watching earlier today The Hunt for Red October. Okay? Good movie. One of the lines in it, though, was talking about, because the caterpillar drive in the Red October, they could slip through even their most SOSist... Is it the most SOSist? Or would it just be SOSist networks? Meaning the most sensitive. Okay? That has a special device. That basically has submarine cloaking. And that's why they would struggle to pick it up. There's still silent running capabilities that you can pick up. But this has cloak. And they would not be able to pick it up. This, however, the bird of prey, we have no reason to believe that its cloak is more advanced, except for beyond the weapons. Beyond being able to fire weapons. That's it. There is no indication that it has a better cloak than any other ship. And this thing has twice entered Federation space. Well, been in Federation space at least twice for attacks. Technically, there was even a reference that there had been other attacks prior, but the two main ones are Kudao and Themis. Now, maybe it's crossing. Not sure. It also... third, because it was at the Enterprise. Now, maybe it has just been inside Federation space, staying cloaked the entire time. And so it only crossed once. Maybe. That seems kind of foolish, but... It's a prototype, you'd want to go back. But it's still like, this is a problem. But, continuing, because we are now following Kessler on the Mortog. Yes, Kessler on the Mortog Outpost 3. Which is basically being described as, yeah, we got the equipment that's a century out of date. We're understaffed. It's boring here. Kessler's just like, I spend the time bored and drunk, because it's a little less bored when I'm drunk. But it does also explain why, because, the Federation never crosses the border. They don't bother. we just get smugglers, which, whatever. Romulan border, that's where they focus everything. So this isn't. There, the outposts were properly equipped, the Romulan side, with the latest detection devices. Mortag 3 creaked with age, a metaphor for the decaying Klingon government. Kessler and his peers were forced to perform their jobs with scanners that had been outdated a century ago, without proper visual displays for viewing passing ships. So that's why they don't just look at the ship, look at the Enterprise, and be like, that's not right. Okay. They were even without weapons. Their only threat lay in informing the Empire of the offending vessel, then hoping the Border Patrol managed to destroy the right ship. Smugglers favored the route. The Sentinels had long ago given up trying to stem the tide. So it's basically because the Federation is never a threat to them, except in the occasion of an actual war. They got lousy tech there. I guess another way to put it might be, for something a bit more modern, this is the U.S.-Canadian border, which is used. There is smuggling that goes on there. It's just far less than the U.S.-Mexico border, so that's where more the focus is. But yeah, it just... They were even without weapons, and it's like... I'm sorry, I'm just getting technical here. Sorry. They don't need weapons. I mean, arguably, the best way to actually have these listening posts would be to have a bunch of things there, and you actually vary which one you're monitoring from. Not necessarily all of them, because that might be too expensive. But you just do it at certain ones, and you change it out randomly, so that way people trying to cross don't know where it's safe, and it also means that you are conserving your resources. But anyway, moving on to just the lower highlight on this page. Kessler straightened and tried to shake himself. The scanner beeped a warning. Kessler straightened and tried to shake himself awake. A feeble light on the aging screen blinked at him, indicating a cloaked vessel. Come back to it. Klingon ships were forbidden by law to remain cloaked while passing the outpost. The smugglers were well aware of that fact and knew it was safer for an unregistered vessel to pass by openly. At least that way the alarm wouldn't wake those working the outpost. They did not know that the half-hearted adjustments made to the ancient scanners to detect the most recent innovation worked only half the time. The Enterprise has a cloak. That's what's stated there. Because it's the Enterprise that is being detected. The Enterprise has a cloaking device. There are various problems with that. I guess the fact that seems to only exist in the novelizations and not in the movies, they can get away with it. Because in TNG, it is stated at least once that the reason the Federation doesn't have cloaking devices is a treaty with the Romulan Empire. Which is stupid, but that's a separate thing. This suggests, and there was a reference in one of the other books that had a cloaking device as well. I'm going to focus on this, though. Because this is not just having one. This is having and using it. Also, I think it was Final Frontier, and Final Frontier sucks. So, set that aside. This is a good story, though. Well, it's a good movie. So, they're cloaked. You would never see a power like the Federation give up a technology to satisfy a treaty. Because that is actively weakening yourself. Promising not to research a technology, that is also weakening yourself, but in a different way. A little bit more passive, but this is we'd have to give it all. No. Yeah. This is quite a problem. But then we get to the actual communication. They try to hail the ship, which should also be like, shit, I guess the cloak isn't that effective. Or I guess, no, they just know that they can still be, yeah, that is true. Spock did point out that they could be detected anyway. The reply came in a feminine voice laced with static. We am thy freighter, Ursva. I think Nichelle Nichols pronounces it Ursva. Ursava in the, like, with an extra vowel in there in the movie. But anyway, 6 weeks out of Kronos, over. Whither are you bound? Kessler asked gruffly, responding in the odd archaic dialect the female had used. It was no small feat to keep the amusement from his voice. The smuggler was probably Rigelian or Catulian. No, Catalan. Catullan. In which case, Kessler owed her a debt of gratitude. He's drinking wine, some sort of spirit from them. And by the way, there was also mentioned prior to, female Klingon smugglers were rare indeed, but if this one was Klingon, he was a grandsire to an Earther. Anyway, but if she knew so little of smuggler's protocol in the Klingon Empire, she would probably never reach her destination. So, basically, he's like, they don't know to just not have the cloak off. Her Klingon is horrible. Oh, man, she's so new. Let's give her a break, guys, huh? And she answers, we are condemning food, things, and supplies to repente over. At this point, Kessler and Grana, who's his buddy over there, both laughed. It even mentions that Mortag 3's unspoken rule insisted that the Sentinels share any opportunities to alleviate boredom. Come back to the highlight, though. Both laughed aloud at the ridiculousness of the lie. The smuggler was so inept that Kessler pitied her. He waved at Grenna to let her pass. If she was hauling Catalan liquor, Kessler wished her good fortune in her task. She would need it. To let her know he knew full well who she was and what she was doing, Kessler uttered a phrase which, in smuggler's code, wished her luck in avoiding border officials. Which is the whole, not to catch any bugs. So then dissolved into raucous laughter. So the scene then on Enterprise is different from in the movie. For one thing, Spock is present. In the movie, I don't think he is. But he is present and actually helped with the translation. It mentions that, fortunately, he was able to skim through the dictionaries very quickly and remember some Klingon that he's heard. You'd think he'd be more familiar with it than just a few phrases, but anyway. Sorry, a few sentences. But still, he does help there, and when he's the one that's like, he just told us not to catch any bugs. Alright, I mean, seems odd, but whatever. Her glance for guidance at the Vulcan, whose expression, though impassive, nonetheless conveyed his total bewilderment at the idiom. But then does the whole because they heard laughter and it's like she opens up again. They all laugh and cuts off and it's like, okay, well, communication's done. I guess we're allowed to go. And she deflated against the board with a shaky sigh and only then realized she'd been holding her breath. Behind her, Spock said gently, "Was that so bad?" She turned her head just enough to narrow her eyes at him. And it's like, I like that. Because it's just one of those, Spock is either being kind of stupid here, like naive, inept when it comes to dealing with humans, or he's just making quite a joke. And she is like, I'm going to kill you, man, but don't even go there. I don't care you're my commanding officer. I don't care you're my friend. I don't care you're a Vulcan. I'm 3 to 4 times my strength. I'm going to kill you. I like it. Okay. Alright, so now I've got to highlight just you see this Jim turn to display a red stain on the back of his ragged coat, so this is just showing to McCoy the Viridian patch. It's like, okay, a red stain. If that's how it actually appears, I'm good with this. Because it has annoyed me in the movie that it looks like just a Velcro patch almost that is just stuck there. It's like, people don't notice this? But if it's instead a stain, where it's like some sort of chemical that Spock put on there, or maybe it is a patch that dissolves and just looks like a stain, then it's like, okay, now it'll get by. People won't notice what that is. They'll think, oh, it's just a stain. He was on a ship covered in blood, with Klingon blood, but it's like, stains are not unreasonable. So it's like, okay, now we got an explanation that I'm happy with that. Happy with that. We do also get some stuff here about how McCoy prefers subcutaneous transponders because, you do that and they're basically invisible. which doesn't make any sense because they must be emitting something, and you definitely think the Klingons would scan for that. But anyway, I'm saying the Viridian patch I could see being something more passive that wouldn't be noticed, but he prefers that. But an emergency supply of these patches are kept on the bridge for occasions when haste prevents you from going to sickbay for the transponders, and also they have a greater range. The patches have a greater range, so yeah. I don't understand why. I can understand having some on the bridge, but you'd think having them at the transporter would make the most sense, and at the shuttle bay, because like the ways that somebody would actually leave the ship, have them there. But anyway, oh yeah. So there's then this, and we're basically at the end of the chapter. So, like in the movie, Marty is like, "Okay, it's your turn." Kirk's like, "All right," gets up, goes over, and just slugs her straight in the jaw. And McCoy doesn't understand why, he goes over to see what he can do to help. Now, in the movie, what happens is while McCoy is there, transforms to look like Kirk. That also reminds me of one thing, but finish with this. Maybe I'll forget, but I'll finish with this. That's not what happens here. McCoy made a small noise of despair and stepped back as Kirk and Martia began to circle each other. It was hardly a fair fight. The brute was 2 full heads taller, and without the heavy leg chains, it slowed Jim down. I think it was actually a little bit, yes, it was a little bit before this, that she changed into being that hulking form that they take down the lift together. She changes into the little girl to get out of leg irons, but goes back to this large form because it would withstand the cold better. So she initially goes to that to fight him. And they are fighting that way. She then changes into like these 2 just fanged jaws, and then again into like a squid thing that wrestles with him. But he manages to like hold his own for a bit. But eventually does then change into Kirk. Yeah, and we've been following McCoy, but she kicked him in the head, I think it was. Although we do get the line of, I can't believe I kissed you. Must have been your lifelong ambition. Which, I wonder where that line came from. If that was Nimoy, maybe, being like, so, Bill, you know how you keep getting the women and all this stuff? Yeah, isn't that nice? I'm poking fun at it, okay? How? You'll see. I mean, just, I could see that. That, it's just he is this narcissist that he always has to get that, so it's like kissing himself would satisfy the narcissist. It's like, I do wonder where that came from, but I could believe it was something like, we're poking fun at Kirk, or even, maybe also at Shatner. I don't know. Not to suggest anything negative about Shatner, but just, maybe he really liked the whole always getting the girl, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna poke a little fun at that, at the character. And because he's also so associated with the character that it's, what was the? Oh yeah, I just wanted to check. Was he? Yes. Martia did strike McCoy full across the face, fell down, dazed, all that. Because it does end with, I know I hate the cliche, but again, I'm okay with this. Mostly. Because the buzzing increased to a painful level until McCoy slipped gratefully into darkness. Which does kind of sound like he's dead, but it's like, you know what, no. Because we got the setup of him being hit in the head, although he has been talking about how he wishes that he could just stop and die, so it might be the cliche that I hate. Might be that. Okay, you know what, no, but I can still give it a pass, because it's like with Gorkon, and how he had the same thing, slipping into darkness. It's kind of like that. In that there's a given reason why, both the head injury and the fact that he is freezing to death, and it's kind of okay with dying. Okay, so we have those 2. And it even had earlier that Kirk was like, okay, I can survive this until the Enterprise gets here, until Spock can rescue me. I can do that. Bones isn't going to last another day. So, yeah, it is set up that he is in danger. And so him slipping in darkness, okay, fine. And then something resuscitates him. Something revives him. That's what happened with Gork. And it's like, you know what? I'm okay with that. because it's not just and then he's fine. No, it is, his condition is serious, and what would ultimately wake him up is the arrival of the Klingons to arrest them, well, kill them, but yeah, which will be in the next chapter, I assume. So yeah, we'll get clarity there potentially. Like if it does have that, he's like wakes with a start kind of thing, like Kirk shaking him or whatever, something like that would revive, not just like, oh, I'm feeling better now. Like he was knocked out and then just comes back. Because I think sometimes when people are knocked out, they do recover quickly. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes. It does remind me one story I heard. Somebody who got knocked out, and it was hours later he was still lying there, apparently. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I think I'll forgive it. I don't feel like adding a highlight for it, so I think I will forgive it. But it's still, it's gray zone, right? So it's either like on the line or it's gray zone where it's like, maybe I need to hate it, maybe I don't. But no, if I'm gonna criticize this chapter, it's largely going to be the threadiness to the detective stuff. It's yeah, we'll see, because if the conspiracy works out well, I'm happy. It'll be fine. I'll see it redeemed. If not, we'll find out. I'll see you next time.